let's do that.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this ongoing series of Empathy Circles, hosted by the Empathy Tent, created by Edwin Recht. My name is Jessica, and I'm going to be the NC and co-facilitator today with Evan, who's here. So why we're doing this, our intention with Empathy Circle is to bridge political and social divides and to build a culture of empathy with this amazing tool that we've been calling Empathy Circle. So I'd like to do a round with you guys to present ourselves. If you can share your name, where you're calling from, and if it's okay with you, your political leanings. Evan, if you want to model it.
Sure. So my name is Evan. I'm originally from Long Island, New York. I've kind of been bouncing around the US lately, and I'd say my political leanings, definitely grown up as sort of a liberal, New York liberal, and I've kind of just been studying more of a needs-based approach and just really just trying to see if we can all get our needs met together and collaborate and negotiate, as a united civilization.
Thank you. And Carolina?
Well, my name is Carolina. I'm from Poland, Central Europe. My political view, in short, is radical left, really radical left, with Gandhian methods, Gandhian means.
Okay, thank you. And Martin?
Yes, Martin Golder. I'm in Victoria, British Columbia. I've been a mediator for the last 20 years, and I guess my political leanings are definitely, liberal, social democratic. I have once, I try very, very hard. I study empathy and I teach empathy, and I try very hard to empathize with the extreme right and even into the fascist realms of Trump and Ford in Ontario and people like that, and to understand what's going on. And once or twice I can get my empathetic understanding to the point where I say, oh, okay, so that's what they're all about. Mm-hmm. And then it's gone and I don't understand it anymore.
It's a process, yeah. Thank you, Martin. Ben?
Hi, everybody. I'm in Hamilton, which is near Toronto. I identify as politically centrist. And is there anything else I'm supposed to say?
Oh, that's okay. You say your name and where you're from and your political leanings. Thank you, Ben.
Sure.
Bill, nice to see you here. If you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, nice to see you. Sure. My name is Bill Filler, and I live in Northern California, and I'm a retired special education teacher, and I identify on the left, but it's complicated.
And I'll wrap it up. So I'm Jessica Vogt. I'm originally from France and I'm living in Toronto right now. I identify, I think, more on the left, green side. And I'm also very like Evan and Martin, focusing on empathy and trying to figure out how can we all share our needs and share understanding, mutual understanding. That's why I'm here today. I wanted to remind people that because we're recording this meeting, people can watch, and watchers, you are invited to take part. It's free and there's no prerequisites really. You can visit, if you want to know more, on empathytent.com or on empathycircle.com to join, or even to become a facilitator yourself. You can start in your living room if you want. A quick definition of Empathy Circle. I believe everything here is mostly familiar with it. We define Empathy Circle as a small group of individuals who speak, listen, and reflect back to each other using a structured format. The key component of that is really reflective listening, right? So today's topic is going to be on climate change. We intentionally leave it vague. How do you feel about climate change? So you really feel free to share whatever comes to you. and we are going to take turn to do some reflecting back. And before, I want to model that with Evan to show a little bit how that works. I wanted to talk about logistics. We really respect your time and we want to finish on time. So it's going to be 3 p.m. on the Eastern Coast, noon for the West Coast. We are going to recording we are recording the Empathy Circle. We're going to post it on Facebook and YouTube, I believe. And last thing I want to say is, like, we're going to stop 15 minutes before the end. And in order to share a little bit of what did you like about it and what would you like to see more of. If you have any questions so far before we model the Empathy Circle with Evan, any questions? Carolina?
Just for the record, I don't speak English very well. I sometimes have some problems with understanding you or expressing my ideas. So sometimes I might stuck in the middle of the sentence. I hope it will not happen today, but I'm just apologizing for that. I'm trying my best. Thank you for being helpful or merciful to me.
Thank you, Carolina. Thank you for letting us know that. Yeah. Any other questions or agreement that you guys want us to know? Everybody's good? Okay. So let's model what an empathy circle looks like. Would you like to be the speaker, Evan, or you want to be the listener?
I'd prefer listener right now, since you have more time to wake up.
Okay, I'll be the speaker. So as a speaker, I'm choosing, you would choose who you want to speak to. I chose Evan for now. So topic of climate change, because last time we already had a bit of an empathy circle on that topic. I felt I had a good anxiety, like it helped my anxiety a bit. Today it's more about my sense of guilt, as I am trying to build a business as a facilitator, as a coach in empathy and nonviolent communication. And I'm focusing so much on that. I'm finding myself, I cut back on all my environmental activities, my volunteering, and I'm feeling guilty about it. I'll stop here for you to have to reflect.
Sure. So it sounds like you're feeling guilty today because you're focusing on your business of trying to become a facilitator and a coach for MVC and empathy. But because of that, you've been cutting back on, your environmental volunteering and such. So, you're feeling a little guilty about that.
Yeah, thanks. That's, yeah, I do feel guilty about that. And the last thing I want to say is, and I haven't found yet a balance. So because I'd like to go back, or a way to merge the two, which actually today, that's one of the things I'm excited about, is I can merge, becoming a facilitator, practicing empathy with the context of climate change and talking about it. And my dream on that particular climate change topic would be, I was just thinking the other day, wouldn't it be cool to have fossil fuel lobbyists sitting down with environmental activists and doing empathy circles. And so I was thinking maybe contacting Bill McKibben at 350 and ask him what do you think? Maybe we can do an empathy circle with the fossil fuel people and see where it goes. Can we actually find a solution together starting with empathy? That's the kind of thing I'm thinking. Maybe I can merge those things together.
Okay, so you're hopeful, it sounds like, because you're saying how maybe you can find a way to merge the two ideas of your empathy work and your environmental work. Today is a great opportunity that you're excited about because we're doing both, and then you're also saying maybe we can get lobbyists to sit down with environmental activists and have an empathy circle, and you even have someone in mind already that you maybe want to reach out to. So that's great.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. I feel heard.
Cool.
So that was a quick a model for you guys. This is what we are hoping to do for today. Little tips is, I don't think I did that very well actually, Evan. Sorry about that. It's try to, as the speaker, to stop for the listener to have time to, hear you and reflect back, because if you speak too much, there's so much words we can take in. So try to be aware of, like, it's going to be your responsibility to stop, to have the listener to have time to reflect back. And you are, as a speaker, also really don't hesitate to help the listener, to let them know if what they're reflecting back is what you meant or not. So if no, that's not exactly what I mean. And so it's a back and forth. And it's your responsibility as the speaker to let the listener know if you felt heard or not. Okay? So Evan, because now you were the listener, it's your turn to be the speaker, and you can choose who you want to speak to. Before we jump, does someone has a question on how that works, so everybody understand the process? Everybody's good? Cool. Awesome. So Evan, go ahead.
Yeah, cool. Martin, will you be my listener?
Okay, Evan.
All right. So I was talking to Jess earlier about this, and she asked if environmental activism is one of my interests. And I was saying how it's not really something I'm like interested in the way that I'm interested in music or, movies. It's just something I'm interested in out of, like, I guess, a need for survival. It's just like this impending doom kind of feeling, like, yeah, we really do need to, put energy into this. Maybe I'll pause there.
So you're not quite sure about environmental activism in your own life and how it fits at the moment. Things like music and movies are things you fully understand and they're in your life, but there is this kind of feeling of impending doom that you feel generates your interest in environmental activism, but you're not sure where it goes.
Yeah, it's not so much that I'm not interested in it. I'm just not interested in it in like a fun way.
So not in a fun way. Okay.
Yeah. Like, it's not exciting for me, but it's fear curbing, maybe.
Right.
And where was I going from there? I'm excited about the U.S. government coming up with the Green New Deal. I think that's bringing a lot of attention to environmental change as an impending issue. Just like, putting that, if the Liberal Party is putting that at the forefront of everything, I think it's a good alignment with how liberals are feeling in general. Like, yeah, this is kind of above everything else. The planet first. We can worry about the rest later.
Right. So so your interest in environmental activism is mostly fear-based, and it's with the impending doom that you talked about earlier. You've really been encouraged by the Green New Deal that has been proposed in democratic circles or liberal circles, and you feel that if that could be made kind of the lens that everything else is done through, then that would be a good thing.
Yeah, I feel fully heard. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Well, maybe I'll try my English on you, Carolina.
Okay, I'm listening. Do we have a timekeeper?
I feel confident that we are if we feel it's getting way too long, we'll let you know. But because we are a small group, I think I'm okay with us being flexible about it.
Okay, I'm listening. Martin.
Okay. When I saw this Saturday's topic as being climate change, I thought I would join this group. The previous groups, a lot of them have been about bridging the left-right divide, and they always seem, more appropriate to Americans to participate rather than Canadians, although we do have a left-right divide here too, for sure, and it's growing as well. But when I saw that it was climate change, I thought, okay, I'll join in on that one. In a way, I'm kind of a little disappointed we don't have a climate change denier here, but they are becoming few and far between.
Let me reflect in this moment. So you saying what I'm hearing, you saying that you joined this particular meeting today because of the topic. When you look at the topics of earlier meetings in this series, Bridging Political Divides, you thought like it's more for Americans, it's not that international topic, but the climate change is more the topic for anybody from any place around the world, as I understand. Is it correct?
Absolutely, yes, absolutely, that's true. I think I've been very, very encouraged. Within the climate change field, one tends to go from existential angst, there's some big words, sorry, to the sort of the grief one feels for what's going on, to momentary flashes of hope, and recently I think my hope has been lifted quite dramatically by Greta Thunberg, the Swedish teenager.
Well, I'm not sure if I understand this part, but I'm hearing that you are among two, opposite kind of bipolar situation, from deep grief to kind of hope. And you mentioned a Swedish boy. I don't know what exactly it is. I don't know this example, but this is the example that gave you a hope. Is it correct?
This is absolutely true. And I will say that if you haven't heard of Greta Thunberg now, you will be very soon.
Okay. So you saying that if I didn't hear before about this guy, I probably hear soon, because I don't know, it's important, or
yes, it is a girl.
A girl, okay, a girl. Mm-hmm.
Yes, Greta is her name. Yeah.
Greta.
Okay, well, thank you. Yes, no, you very good. Well done. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Well, so I will maybe choose Bill.
Okay, listen.
Okay. Well, when I'm thinking about climate change and stopping the kind of climate disaster that's coming to us, I see the lack of right approach. Everybody appeals to governments. It's kind of on the level of appealing to our morality, to our dreams, to our responsibility or duties. Mm-hmm. But we don't talk about the real sources of change.
Okay.
I stop there.
Okay. So when you think about climate change, you feel that a lot of what you've heard is missing the point. And a lot of that we might group as sort of aspirational. It's appealing to hope and to people's better nature. But we really haven't addressed the physical nitty-gritty issues of why it's happening and then what we have to do to actually fix it.
Yeah. And I think that I usually say that in all our former meetings, I was kind of, I had the very same approach. I see few levels of this problem again. First is kind of approach, cultural approach, which I suppose we can meet in every culture, I would say in every religion tradition. But I will try to describe it in Christian culture because that's in what I'm immersed.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there are several layers to the issue, and then one layer needs to be just what you call the cultural approach. In other words, the shared beliefs among a group of people in a culture, and what you're going to use is the Christian culture as a model because that's what you're familiar with.
Yeah. So in Christianity, we have kind of two approaches. One is derived from kind of, well, not kind of, from the Bible statement about God giving us dominion. You call it dominion over the earth and every living thing on our planet, and that's the one approach. And we have another approach, which I call, in short, a kind of Franciscan approach, when we treat every living being and everything as a kind of minor brothers and sisters, let's say.
Okay, so using that Christian culture as a model, there are two contradictory beliefs almost about how we treat the environment. One is where we have dominion, and it's simply the rest of life is to be used for our pleasure or whatever. And then the other one is more of what you call a Franciscan approach, where we're looking at the animals and the environment as more our brothers and sisters, and a more egalitarian and way to look at things, wanting everything to prosper.
Yes, and well, we can look for example, there was this famous situation, I think it was Oklahoma, where the governor, I don't remember her name, I might make mistake, but she kind of announced the oil fields prayer day, and it was kind of supporting oil companies, and she was kind of appealing to this idea of having dominion over that God gave us fossil fuels and we have to use them. That's what God gave us. That's one approach, and the other approach is more like environmentalist or Native Americans who fight for their territories and don't want to build pipelines on their territory. So those are two different approaches we face every day.
Okay, so two real-world examples that you gave was the governor of Oklahoma, who basically prioritized drilling for oil and used sort of a biblical justification as that God, and so therefore it is our God-given duty to take it out, as opposed to more of an environmentalist approach, which is again more of the corresponds to the Franciscan approach in Catholicism, where we're seeing as kind of like bringing everything along together, where everything is listened to.
Yeah, I might say that you make my speech better than I can. I feel fully heard. Thank you, Bill.
Oh, thanks. Okay.
You make it better.
Oh, well, I just, well, thank you. Thank you for the compliment. I really try. What you have to say is worthwhile hearing. And then let's see. I'm sorry, down below, hasn't gone yet?
Ben hasn't gone yet.
Okay, Ben. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry I didn't get, sorry, Ben. Will you listen to me, Ben?
Yes.
Thank you, Ben. Well, I'm really, I certainly agree what Carolina characterized as sort of the Franciscan approach. Being fortunate to live in California, I have the ability to interact with nature, on a regular basis. And so there are two things that are kind of like getting at. One is that I had the good opportunity to go kayaking in Monterey Bay with humpback whales. And so I was out there, and the most dangerous animals out there was Homo sapiens. People say, oh, animals are inscrutable. No, my feeling, and this has worked for me, animals have a job to do. You know, they're trying to do their job. They're trying to feed themselves, you know, shelter. They don't have a Holiday Inn. They don't have like a motel. And it's like the whales are sort of like, we're here to feed, you know, here's the general area. Keep out of our way. You know, we're not here to hurt you, but if it's between you and a ton of herring, the herring wins. Okay, I'll stop there.
Cool. So, living in California, you experience a lot of nature, and you're sympathetic to the, what's it called, the Franciscan outlook that Carolina mentioned. You recently went kayaking in Monterey Bay, which I presume is somewhere in California.
Yes.
And you kayaked with whales. And you realize that you are the most dangerous being there, that humans are.
Yeah.
Animals are generally just trying to get on with their day, doing their work that they need to do to eat and survive. And the last bit about they choose herring over you, you mean they'd rather eat herring than look photogenic for you?
Yeah, well, if I'm in the way of getting in there, they're getting their
right.
Right. Okay. You know, and I'll just to add just a short. By the way, that was true of great white shark too. I was out there, and we saw a great white shark, and he was obviously traveling from one place to the other, and I kind of like, you know, you don't realize it. Like in a movie, you'd say, "Get out of there." But, you know, when you're in it, you kind of, oh, what is it? Oh, is it? And then all of a sudden he gave a little boom with his tail. And we turned around and went home. And that was just, you know, he was saying, hey, I've got a place to go. I'm going to feed. I don't really want to spend any energy on you, but I will if I have to. I'll stop there.
Wow. So you were kayaking and there was a great white shark.
Yeah.
And you're aware that in movies in this sort of scenario, you would know to get the hell out of there. But it took you a bit of a tail flap in your general direction to realize that, yes, you should immediately get out of there. So the shark was just wanted to get on with its day to get food, but if you bothered it too much, it would be worth its time to bother you back.
Yes, message delivered. And so, and then finally, the last point, I'm reading a book called by John McPhee called The Annals of the Former World, which is about geological time. And my basic takeaway is how everything is in motion. When you look at a mountain range, you're not really looking at it static. You're looking at a breaking wave of rock. And so that in contrast to realizing that and then seeing how fast climate change is happening, it really puts in perspective the changes we're making. And then I'm good.
Cool. So you're reading John McPhee's book, which let's see if I can get it. Annals of Former Worlds. Okay. And that's a powerful image of a mountain range, not as static, but as a wave of continental drift. And I don't remember what you said to finish.
So when you contrast the...
Oh, yes. Got it. Yeah.
Okay.
Change, global warming is changing much faster than continental drift.
Yeah.
Change on the human scale is far more than change on the geological scale.
Thank you, Ben. I feel fully heard. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks.
Mhm.
If that's everyone, then Jennifer, would you empathize with me?
Do you mean Jessica?
Yeah. Sorry, did I say the wrong name?
You said Jennifer.
Oh,
It's
I
okay.
apologize. I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's a mystery to me, but that happens to me all the time.
Oh no. I'll also say I'm sick, so I'm allowed to make mistakes.
It's sure you're lad.
I did not notice that this was about climate change, so I haven't done my homework. I'm more interested in the general topic of talking across political divides.
You can talk about whatever's alive for you, all, by the way. It doesn't have to be on the topic.
Oh, really? Oh. I grew up in a pretty lefty household, and I would say we didn't do a lot of honoring of people's opinions we didn't agree with politically. We were quite open-minded about cultural diversity, except for our political opponents, I would say. And so I was quite surprised when I actually, as a young adult, came across different political opinions as described by the people who actually believed them, and I found some value in them. So my political outlook has been a long and winding road, I'd say, and I'm training to be a minister. I jokingly say I'm training to be a minister for atheists, and we're quite a. I think we have a reputation for being quite left, and what I'm finding is that there's a lot of people who are more center left or center who just keep their opinions to themselves, and it's the more left people who are more vocal and maybe even assume that everyone agrees with them. So for my professional work, this topic of opening up dialogue across political differences is quite personal.
So what I'm hearing, Ben, is that first of all, you're acknowledging that, oh, it's about climate change. I didn't realize that. And you're more interested in talking something that seems to be really close home for you, that this idea that you are giving us a bit of context, giving me a bit of context about, I grew up in a household with mostly one type of political leanings, and you realize once you kind of like got to meet the world that you hear other opinions, and it almost like you were surprised, and it intrigued you and surprised you to how people who said that were like lefty, I don't think you mentioned fully that, but it sounded like implicitly you were discovering that they're not really open to even listen to the other side, if there's another side. And you are sharing that you are a minister for atheists, and that even in that experience that you're having with that is you are also seeing the same thing, where the conversation is shut down when could be an opportunity to talk about things that even maybe we disagree, and you're noticing that there's this shutdown, there's this like people, I don't know why you mentioned a specific word, that people would not even share their opinion and just go on with their day and interact with other people without feeling they can even share their opinion. I'm sure I'm forgetting some stuff, but
no, that was great. Sorry, I talked a lot and then remembered.
That's okay. Like, is there anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I will mention my kind of my attitude towards climate change. I would say I'm concerned about the biomass on the planet, something like being cut by 50% in the last however many years. That's really worrying. I understand that I guess I'm concerned about our ability to farm as temperatures rise. It's not so simple as just planting food farther north or farther from the equator. It's more complicated than that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm concerned about that, and I'm concerned about mass migration that is required by climate change. But I'm also more fearful generally of political solutions than I am of the climate problem.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a bit, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Just, I tend to be cynical of when a lot of political control is required, and for the whole planet to cooperate, a lot of political control is required.
Mm-hmm. So let me refer back to see if I understand very well. So you were kind of circling back into this climate change topic and sharing your concerns, your few concerns about first how you talked about the biomass being cut by 50% very fast in the last few years, and how it's impacting farming, which is completely vital for human. And also you mentioned the political scene, that you feel very cynical about how it doesn't seem to be a match of what's supposed to happen politically with what how fast climate change is happening. It seems like the political do the opposite. It's like climate change is happening very fast, and on the other side, it seems that they're slowing down.
I'd say my fear about the fear is that in order to make fast change, we'll need a lot of political control, and I have fears about political control.
Oh, you have fear around concerns and fear and maybe anxiety around the amount of political control it's required to actually have the fast change we need?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it scares you a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Anything else?
Yeah. No, that's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben, for sharing. I'll talk to Martin. I'm feeling very inspired by everything I'm hearing. As the facilitator, I want to share that I was concerned, like, oh yeah, we don't have deniers, and it seems like, Martin, because you mentioned like this interest in having people coming, there is this desire, because it's not the first, Martin, you're not the first person I hear telling me, you know, I want to talk about climate change, but I feel that would be more efficient in an empathy circle to talk with people who have opposite opinion, because there's a strong desire to understand why you're not doing anything. Well, why aren't you concerned, or why are you concerned in a way that's not going to help, you know, us to live? And so I was feeling a bit anxious that, you know, not that I feel we failed, you know, that we didn't bring deniers, but it is a challenge to bring to have people from every opinions to come in. And when you mentioned that you wish you had someone that we could have someone who we are not on the same page to make it a bit more interesting, I felt a bit like, oh shoot, you know, as a facilitator, I felt that.
Okay, so as the facilitator and organizer of the circle, you kind of felt picked up on the point I was making, and we didn't have somebody from the other views, the more extreme anti-climate change views on the panel, which would enable the features of empathy circles, which is to bridge divides, and so not having that person, that sort of felt like a failure.
Yeah, but yeah, I didn't feel picked, but I thought it was interesting that you were mentioning it, and my disappointment as well. I realized that I was also disappointed that maybe it would have been interesting. But when I said that, I feel like I don't want to say it's not interesting to hear other people's opinion, even though we are all on the same page that something needs to happen. A lot of things needs to happen for climate change. But it was my realization of my personal disappointment that I was like, oh yeah, me too. I wish we could have maybe more juicy conversation, you know.
So I guess the sense is that with the nature of the empathy circle, more of a divide makes for more of a juicy conversation, and so it seems like it would be better. Whereas if we had somebody who was a little more off in left or right field, as we say.
Yeah, thank you. Then I wanted to share that recently I had a change in how I thought the future might go. Like I'm a planner, and I tend to be a pessimist, and I like to think of catastrophic, outcome in the future in my personal life and in the world. And until recently, it was more like capitalism is going to crash, and there's not going to be any, we're not going to be able to get money in your ATM, and you're going to, have to go back to local economy or whatever. And recently, I have more this catastrophic view of war over water is going to happen first. It's already happening, and I'm feeling very scared for my husband, who is a young man and being called can be called to war at any time now in our lifetime, and it scared the shit out of me. And I changed my view of how things could happen, and I'm seeing myself planning for like, let's live in like a remote place with fresh source of water and create like a small community and protect ourselves. And I'm just, curious about this whole thinking process I'm having about, does everybody think that? Does everybody think of protecting themselves and think of what can we do?
So recently, your thinking about climate change has become a little more catastrophic in the sense that there might be a collapse of capitalism, and money would be hard to get, and so how would you deal with that? You'd have to develop more local resilience. You're worried about if there are wars over water, which are already happening. Your husband might get called up into that, and at the same time, should you become a survivalist and go off and live in a small community in the hills and be very self-sufficient with your own water and food supplies and things like that, and you're having a hard time kind of bringing those thoughts into this where you are now, and what do you do with that? What do you do with those kind of thoughts?
Yeah, because I'm more a person who likes to think herself as someone who want to be inclusive. But when I feel my life is going to be in danger, I'm going to be like, I'm going to protect my own first, and that scares me a bit to think that way, because that's not my value.
Right. So you tend to be a more inclusive kind of person and community or focused. But when you think those kind of catastrophic thoughts, your feelings go to protecting your own and putting up the barriers and everybody keep out, this is mine, the kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's a scary thought. I mean, to suddenly realize that that those kind of thoughts have a place in you is a bit scary.
It is a bit scary. Yeah, thank you. And I'll finish with. I'm really also struggling with what is the best action or actions. I tried so many environmental groups. Divestment. Do I need to focus on divestment? Do I need to focus on local economy transition? Like I don't know anymore what to do. to support, to make, heard. And I hear Ben talking about political, like, and also Carolina mentioning, like, it's not about trying to change politicians' point of view and trying to change policies. And I'd like to ask to the group, like, what is then? Like, is it grassroots only? And I have a hard time to picture what is. I've tried so many things that I don't know what is the best action we need to do now.
So in the face of these kind of catastrophic thoughts and the various influences you're feeling, you're a bit lost as to where to go, where to put your energies, whether to put them into a group that's on local resilience, or a group that's doing some other work within the environmental community, and where is your energy best spent with these impending changes and catastrophic changes that are coming? Where is it best to spend your energy? And you're a bit lost in making that decision, and where can you spend your energy?
That a friend of mine is really involved in Extinction Rebellion in the UK, and he's so convinced that it's it's civil disobedience. It's about go to prison to feel heard, and I'm being really challenged by that. Because it's affecting me personally. Like, if I go to prison, like, I'm gonna run a business, is it time to put your life on hold and to just fight? And I'm struggling with that.
So you're finding, following on where do you put your energies? You have a friend who's in Extinction Rebellion, and they advocate civil disobedience, and in fact they advocate even beyond civil disobedience in places, going to prison and doing illegal things in order to be heard and to affect these influences that are coming down on society. And you're wondering, should I go that way? But then that changes my whole life. I might go to prison, or I can't run a business. That's it. I mean, it's like throwing yourself into the battle at the war front. Should you go to the front lines? That's what I'm hearing.
That's very well said. Thank you so much. It was a lot. Thank you so much, Martin.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you. Okay, well, and so, okay, Evan, shall I go with you this time?
Sure, whoever you like.
Okay. Following on from what Jessica, right? Jessica said. I nearly said Jennifer because it's Jessica, right? So following on from what Jessica was saying, I think it's a dilemma that is being very, very widely felt at the moment by many people. I think the children's strike that is happening every Friday now around the world is being is a hugely successful way to spend that energy. For instance, all of a sudden, the children have discovered that they have the power. They have the power to lead, and they have the power to affect things. And it's their generation that is going to be most affected. So I'm incredibly encouraged by the Strike for Climate movement.
Yeah, so you're saying how, going off of what Jessica's saying, this is a dilemma that we're all feeling, and what to do with our energy. And you're encouraged by children kind of leading the wave with going on strikes, and how great it is, I guess, that they realize that they have the power to affect change with their presence or removing it, I guess.
Absolutely. I think I think the internet, as we are discovering here, has changed absolutely everything in our world. And there was some just wonderful, kids with the power of Twitter and Facebook and the other social media that they've grown up with, and is completely and utterly natural to them to be part of, can have absolutely the same weight in those spheres as Donald Trump or anybody else. If there have been some wonderful cases of kids taking down politicians with incredible tweet storms,
Yeah, so you're saying how amazing it is that the internet has changed kind of the scale of power where kids can sort of globalize and do these tweet storms and almost, take down politicians and have the same scale of power that, someone like Trump might have and really help turn the tides.
Yeah, I think that's good. Is there anything else I want to add to that at this point? I think that where I'm sort of feeling at the moment, I'm still kind of dealing at the moment, I think, with the grief piece. When you see the extinction of insects and various species and ecosystems, and know that it is, our basically profligate ways that have caused that. It does cause guilt and grief. The guilt, not so much. I've never really found guilt to be a particularly useful thing. But grief, I think, on the other hand, has power to motivate us in some directions, but I'm not yet sure exactly where that's going to send me.
Okay, so you're saying how in your dealing with everything, you're still in the grief part of it, maybe, where just thinking about all the changes that humans have affected, just kind of how much you need to grieve over that, maybe to get through the feeling of everything. And you're saying how guilt maybe is not, you haven't found that as nearly effective, but grief can actually be quite powerful to motivate us to take action.
Yes. It's almost hard for me to know that I have been actually heard, because I'm actually not quite sure what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still struggling with some of these feelings within myself, and so putting them into words here is a bit tentative. But I think by and large, your reflection back is capturing what I'm saying. Yes, thank you.
Okay, so you're saying how you're not sure if you're feeling heard because you're not sure what you're saying, and it's all just kind of still tentative, kind of almost using it like a soundboard to kind of see where you're at.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you, Evan.
Sure. Carolina, will you listen?
Yes, of course I will try.
All right.
Reflect.
Yeah, so I think I don't have a lot to say, really. I want to know from people who are more studied than me on this topic. Number one, what I can do from where I am with limited energy and time and resources. And number two, what I can say to people who deny climate change.
So what I'm hearing you saying that you don't have huge knowledge about climate change, but you would like to learn from people who study that topic and have kind of, let's say, legitimate knowledge about it. And you see two problems you would like to learn from them. First, what can you do personally? And the second question is, what can you say? How you can argument with people who deny climate change? What to say to them to change their minds?
Yeah. Speaking to my first point, I just wish there was a very easy, accessible action that I could help spread. You know, like here's the top leading expert who knows exactly what we need to do. Here's the step that you can take right now. It's very easy. Anyone can do it from their computer. They can go to this place and this will help. And then if you have, more energy, then you can do step 2 and you can go out and do this thing and,
Okay, so referring to point 1, you're saying that I kind of hearing that you kind of feel that it's very complicated. It's not simple, but you would like to have it simple, kind of telling you what to do from point 1, point 2, point 3, and you can just follow from one point to another point, step by step, with simple actions that are kind of understandable and easy to do. But what I'm hearing underlines that you feel it's not that simple. Is it correct?
currently it's not simple. There's no, we have so many different groups, doing different angles that I feel like the common person doesn't know where to start,
So you're saying that for just regular people, common people, it's not that easy to decide where to start, where to go. You feel kind of lost, as I understand.
Yeah. Thank you. I feel fully heard.
Okay, thank you. So maybe this time I will choose Ben if Ben is here, or I might come back to Bill.
Okay.
I'm not sure if Ben is here.
Ben?
Oh,
there-
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will try to speak to Ben. Can you reflect me?
Yes. Thanks for asking.
Okay. Okay. Well, in first round, I said about those two approaches, which I think is typical for not just for Christian culture or Christian tradition. I assume we can find it in any culture, kind of possessive attitude and kind of brotherhood, or more kind of approach that incorporate kind of feeling being a part of something bigger.
So
I stop there.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So you felt what you're talking about in the first round of finding what you find within the Christian tradition, you see in a lot of traditions. There's possessiveness, but there's also brotherhood or a desire for community. I gotta unlock the door, so I'll just be a second, but I can still listen.
Okay.
I think I got everything.
Well, I mean that one approach is kind of possessive and ruling the world, and the other approach is kind of I am a part of bigger about I'm a part of something bigger, so it's kind of different approach. Yeah, and I think that this first attitude is kind of goes together with economic culture we live in. I think this is the element we miss in our discussion about climate change. I stop there.
So the possessiveness, culture of possessiveness, I'll call it the selfish culture, is found within all outlooks, and the desire to be part of something bigger is found in all outlooks. And you're seeing in our, say, our individualistic economic system, you're seeing the possessiveness.
Yeah, and I think that just focusing on climate change issues, it's not enough. We have to talk about our economic culture, which is a culture of very specific, in my opinion, insane imperative of permanent growth. I think this paradigm, this model of economy is insane, and that if we don't change that, we have no chance to stop climate change.
You're seeing the current economic system relying on growth to be insane. Imagine because it's unsustainable. And so when we address climate change, we need to address our economic system as well.
Yes, I think that obviously we have to exercise or execute some new innovations that help us to keep our economy more sustainable. But we have to change our general approach, which is based on permanent growth, probably in English is GDP growth, that must be bigger and bigger and bigger and never stop. I'm asking to where it must grow. And the permanent expense, expanding the economy. Yeah, I stopped there.
So I heard the growth of GDP is relying on that is very bad.
And part of it is kind of idea of expanding the industry, the economy. And let's say 3-4 centuries ago, it was just a colonial conquista. Then we overrun the whole planet, and we kind of conquer back our minds, our consciousness, producing artificial needs and selling gadgets and sophisticated entertainment to fill our artificial needs. So our GDP can grow and grow, but this is the paradigm, the model that produces this ecological catastrophe. So we have to change this model of economy.
So for the last few centuries, there's a colonial attitude of conquering the whole world, and now it's kind of the same attitude, but it's focused more on being greedy about our own consumption.
Yeah.
And it's a very unhealthy attitude, and our economic system depends on buying things we don't really need.
Yeah, I like to call it conquering our minds, our consciousness, by producing artificial needs that are not real needs. You just produce them to sell the commodities. It's kind of, Americans are well known for eating a lot of food, and then they have to take digesting pills, and they have to go to doctors, and then they can eat more. It's kind of crazy thing, Sorry for that example.
This is great. So the conquering of the mind, I wasn't clear if it was our own minds that we're conquering or other people's minds, but
general society.
Just the conquering of the mind by these artificial needs. And And when we have a problem, we go to the doctor and they don't fix, they do a temporary superficial fix that doesn't solve the underlying problem.
Well, actually, doctors solve our problems so we can overeat more and
Yeah.
so on and so on. It's kind of spiral. You call it spiral? Yeah.
Spiral, yeah.
Spiral. And that's how the GDP and the economy grows. But to where? We don't need that. Okay.
Done?
I stop there.
Okay, so your final point was that we don't need the spiral of needs building upon needs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. Bill?
Listening.
All right. Okay. I think when I put the climate change risk in the context of human history, I feel like, okay, maybe it will be as bad as the Black Plague, or I can't really wrap my head around it being a whole lot worse than a typical century 500 or more years ago. Like when I see a big long checklist of problems with climate change, I think a lot of the things on the list are kind of like, that's pretty minor compared to the Black Plague. I'm not going to sweat that one. Like if an island sinks and everyone has to move off of it, that's too bad, but that's not catastrophic.
Okay. So you're basically trying to put climate change in context, in historical context. And so the parallel you found was the Black Plague. And so that's sort of like you're kind of like a high water mark or something, to judge things. So, certain things, is it Black Plague bad enough? Does this rise to the level? And a lot of the things you saw don't rise to that. They're bad, but they don't rise to the level of the Black Plague. So the underlying feeling I'm getting is that is climate change as catastrophic as people say it is?
Yeah, thank you. So when I think about what I can do over the next 50 years, say, I feel like the main things I can do are work for peace, because peace will make it easier to solve immigration issues. Work for peace, work for cheaper solar panels, I think is an easier way to get rid of oil, is to reduce the price of solar and wind. I'll stop there for now.
Okay. So in all of the things and the confusion, you were thinking of two ways, to act. One, you feel, is to work for peace. And then the other one is to bring down the price of solar panels and wind power and things that would effectively make a change and would also, generate revenue too.
Mm-hmm. And my biggest fear over the next 50 to 100 years is technology, is machine learning. It's absolutely incredible how capable machine learning algorithms are now. Like they can win strategic video games based on a few hours of training. I feel like we can easily reduce the reflectiveness of the Earth using technological solutions that will help cool it down. My fear is that the technology will have so many unintended side effects. And like if we tell a machine learning algorithm to go and paint the snow black to increase the reflectiveness of the Earth, it might just paint everyone black. I don't know, like just cover everybody in tar and call that a solution. So I'll stop there.
Okay. So the major fear is what you call is AI or artificial intelligence or machine learning, and you've been really, really, impressed by how a machine can just after observing a few hours win at a strategic game just by observing. So you see, and there are concerns about a lot of unintended consequences from the unrestricted development of that, or where that could go. And the other example you gave as far as the Earth is concerned is that if we could then, reduce the, if we had a machine that said, okay, you want to paint the world black, that'll paint everybody black, and sort of wouldn't have the nuance or discernment that human beings do, and that's what you see as a kind of runaway AI effect.
Thank you. Yeah,
And
I am done. Yeah, that's everything.
Okay, thanks, man. All right.
Thank you.
All right, I'll talk to Martin.
Okay, yeah, Bill.
So there are a lot of things that I've got like a popcorn thing. I've got a lot of stuff going on. So the first thing about bringing climate deniers in, and I want to push back on that a little bit. I certainly agree that climate deniers should be respected, every human, and that's part of empathy, and that's fine. And if climate denier comes here, but I don't really think that climate denial meets intellectual rigor in any sort of way. And so therefore, I'm not really, as far as like to hear about all the essentially oil industry propagated propaganda about it, that doesn't really make me understand the situation anymore. So I'll stop there.
Okay, so you were just pushing back a little bit on the original comment that both Jessica and I were making. I think I was probably made it first about, should we have a climate denier kind of person on the panel just to kind of liven things up a bit. But you feel that there's really no use to that because there is no intellectual rigor at all to the climate denier arguments that they're likely to come forward with. They're only going to come forward with oil industry propaganda. And so it really doesn't serve any useful purpose to have them here.
No, I wouldn't say that. I make a very clear distinction between a climate denier who does have a purpose here, the human being who believes that and should be listened to and respected, as opposed to feeling left out that climate denial as an ideology or as a scientific stance. So that's the distinction that I'm making. So a climate denier would be great, it's fine as a human being, but climate denial, not so much.
I see. So it's the argument itself, the climate denial as an argument, is the sort of industry fuel propaganda piece, whereas a person who happens to have those views for whatever reason is a completely different story. To have them here it would be just fine because they're a human being. They need to be respected and listened to just like anybody else.
Absolutely. And the other thing I want to talk about is how, we change. And I understand, Ben talked about, if you're going to make a rapid change, many times there's political overreach and things like that. And I just, there's a guy, I forgot the name, he's the New York Times ethicist. And he did a study in the 80s, 70s, and 80s. If you walked on the streets of New York City, you were going to step in dog poo. It was just, I'm sorry, I think there was an algorithm. And so, and what they started to do is they did have a law, but it wasn't really enforced. So, people weren't getting arrested for this. But what happened is that the cultural attitude changed so that people, if they didn't pick up after their dog, they'd get a little bit of a look or something like that. So then people started to comply because it became a generally accepted cultural norm.
Okay. So there was something just before the dog poop story. Like I'm so involved in the dog poop story.
Okay.
I lost the first
That was a dog poop. Can't miss with that.
But it was, I guess it's to do with making certain behavior patterns fashionable. And I think the dog poop story kind of indicated that, where by just bringing a certain way of being to everybody's attention and changing the cultural attitudes towards something, you could instigate a behavior change in the population. So that was the dog poop piece, but I think I missed something just before that.
I'm not sure what it was.
Okay.
So you're off the hook.
Okay.
And I'm done. Thank you. I feel hurt.
Okay. Thanks, Bill. Now I think are we back in sequence, or am I out of sequence here? Or?
It doesn't really matter, Martin. Whoever you want to be heard from, like, yeah.
Okay. Well, Jessica, why don't I?
Sure.
Why don't I talk to you? I mean, yeah, I now know why I came and joined this particular group. It's actually quite interesting, fun, educational, moving, to be in an empathy circle. It almost doesn't matter on the size or the subject, I suppose. It's that ability for each person to say whatever it is they want to say, and to have somebody else listen to that, and to the point where they get heard with nobody interrupting. That's the big thing, isn't it? Nobody interrupts you while you can say your piece, and nobody interrupts you. And so when they say that, reflect it back to you, and you feel heard, I mean, it is a very powerful feeling.
Wow, yeah. So it sounds like you're saying you're recognizing, oh, there's a good reason why I'm here. And it's because it sounds like you're feeling the energy of what an empathy circle does on you, how you seem so excited about being able to talk without being interrupted. You think it's pretty great that it happens, and you find the conversations very interesting. You mentioned educational, entertaining, and it seems like you're enjoying yourself here today in that circle. And then, yeah, you're sharing it with us.
Yes, that's right. I think even, and I think one of the things that has come out for me in this particular circle too is it is a real conversation, and people are really saying, what they feel, and they're all really good points. And as we go around, people can reply to them. I mean, I think Ben's point about the sort of the world government boogeyman kind of idea, where the kind of political control that is really going to be needed in order to address climate change in any kind of civilized and elegant way, does require that huge level of global control, or at least global involvement. I would say less than control, it's more global involvement. And I think maybe that's where the Paris Agreement was so impressive, to have 196 countries actually agree on something. Even though it wasn't enough, they actually agreed on something.
What I'm hearing, like you started saying, like, yeah, wow, it is a real conversation that's happening, and everybody's putting their weight and share what they want to share, and it still feels flowing in a way. And then you pointing out Ben's point on, like, you said the political boogeyman supposedly to fix everybody, and how you mentioned as an example the Paris conference, the COP, about how it's amazing how sometimes we can achieve by how we could we can agree on something, and it's not enough, but it is possible. It sounds like there's a sense of it is possible that government can agree on doing something.
Yeah.
And then it was part of like what you're saying, like everybody has something interesting to say in the conversation that's happening here.
Yes, exactly that. And I think just to continue that a little bit, when they had the Copenhagen conference, one of the earlier COPs, it was live streamed. Every session was live streamed, as they are still today. And it was the first one that I actually spent a lot of time on the live stream, and you could go from room to room and listen to the conversations that were going on in each room. And you could even go out in the street with roaming reporters with their iPhones and things who were streaming conversations from the crowds outside. And I spent about 3 days literally just going around the conference and listening to the talks and listening to all the ideas that were going on. And it was, incredibly powerful. I think when I heard Ben talk about, that political control, and I think he's right to be somewhat fearful of that sort of control, especially with the kind of strongman politics that is sort of rising up around the world.
Mm. You're sharing a very interesting experience about how the first, one of the first COP in Copenhagen, you were really involved. You really followed the conversation for 3 days in a row, listening even what was happening on the street from journalists, and then you tagging that to again what's Ben mentioning about his fear that you think is a you can relate to that fear that this rise of like this political man that has control. And that is scary to know that this is more and more happening, and this is what the tendency is right now.
Mm. Yes, absolutely. So I guess just to finish, to me, I feel like battle lines are drawn, and we have to make choices at some degree. As a mediator, I always try to not, draw battle lines, but I'm finding it harder and harder to do that. To say, well, no, I'm sorry, that is wrong.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It sounds like as a mediator, it's kind of almost going against your professional instincts. You are a mediator, you want to reconcile, you're mediating, and at the same time the reality for you is there are battle lines, like he's mentioning. There is a right and wrong in a way, and that there is and we need to recognize that if we want to move forward.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yes, thank you very much. Yes,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you for sharing, Martin. Yeah, I agree with you. It's very, very interesting. So many things, a different conversation like Carolina on like very focused on like the economy first to be able to actually have a change on climate change. And I thought that was a great point. I forgot to mention who I was talking to. I could talk to Carolina.
Okay, I'm listening.
So I was mentioning, I'm enjoying the conversation as well as Martin, and pointing out as an example your point. I thought it was fascinating to hear you talk about your clarity around, for you, the way we're going to be able to make some changes on climate change is by changing the way we deal with our economy.
Yeah, so can you stop?
Yeah, go ahead.
I need smaller parts to reflect. So you're saying that our talk is very interesting to you. You see interesting points in what others say, particularly when I mention about economy, and that the fact that to change the situation with climate, we first need to change the situation with our economy. Is it
Yeah.
correct?
It is, and it's fascinating because actually I'm just gonna grab it. Yes, last night a friend just passed me this book, and I think this is related to what you're saying. It's called the No Nonsense Guide to Degrowth and Sustainability. And I think this is a bit what you're saying, like this idea that we need to rethink how we think of our economy, and it's. I find that fascinating.
So you're saying that yesterday or a few days ago you got this book that is about what I just mentioned, that this insanity of permanent growth. And as I understand, you think that it is really the point. We have to change our attitude.
I don't know if I was saying I was the point, but I recognize how it's a conversation, or this is something I would want to learn and understand more.
Okay, so you're saying that you want to learn more, you want to read this because it's kind of conversation in the book, as I understand. It's kind of interview, and you want to read that. That's what you said?
Yes, I don't know if this is an interview. I know it's a book by an author. It's
Okay.
It's a nonfiction book. It's not an interview.
Okay, so you're saying that you want to read this book because you think it might be interesting and explanatory, let's say.
Yeah, exactly. And that was one of the things I find fascinating about what's happening today. And the other thing I was thinking was I finally understood. I wasn't really clear on Ben's point before about the political control. I thought he had meant we need political control, and Martin clarified that for me actually, which I thought was interesting how it comes back. That they don't have too much control, and that's the danger.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So you're saying that you wasn't sure what Ben meant.
Yeah.
And after what Martin said, it became clear that it's not about controlling more, but actually opposite, about the danger of political control over society, economy, whatever.
Yeah. And the last point is I'm going to circle back to Ivan with his questions about how, for me, when I'm hearing that, is reaffirming that it is a grassroots, that we all have choices that we need to act on if we actually want to change something.
So you're saying that it's also important to you what Evan said before, about kind of grassroots action, that everybody needs to make his own choice, his or her own choice, and to kind of take the action.
Yeah, because Evan was mentioning, what can I do at my level? And how can I have a conversation with a denier if I meet one? Which for me, my interpretation was, it means that things are going to change only if we as individuals want it to change, not waiting for the big guy to decide.
So what I'm hearing you saying that even put the whole discussion in the right kind of angle of personal approach. What can I do, and how can I talk to to people who deny the climate change? It's kind of correct angle we should take in our actions.
Yeah, and actually would like to offer 2 ideas for Evan. Actually, the what to do, in my experience, volunteering in something that brings you joy, that you're good at. That would be a first piece for me.
So you're saying that you want to give some propositions to Ivan, and referring to the point number one, what to do, what can I personally do, is to volunteer in some actions that you feel good with, you feel joy in acting. It has to be a personal, giving a joy action.
Yeah, exactly. That reminds me, if you're an actor, there's a great play going around right now about environmental stories that if you love acting, you can do that as a volunteer thing, as an idea.
Okay, so it has to respond to your personal needs, kind of.
Yeah.
And if somebody is an actor, for example, he can participate in some, let's say, staging some stories.
Exactly. And the other point was, what do I say to deniers? I would say, give them empathy.
So another point, what should I say to deniers is just working on empathy and giving them your empathy.
Yeah, that was my suggestion for Evan, and thank you, Carolina.
Okay. I'm a little bit lost how to close the circle. Probably I should. I'm not sure to whom I should say who missing in our circle.
Yeah, Carolina, we still have a good 10 minutes, so you can just pick whomever you wanted to talk to.
Well, probably I will choose Ivan, maybe. Can you respond?
All right.
Well, I had something came to my mind when Jessica was saying, well, okay, about the empathy to deniers. I like the idea, but I also have kind of feeling that it might be a little kind of, how we call it, protectional. We use the word protectional
Protective.
in English. Protective, yeah. I mean that, well, I'm not sure this is right word. I mean, it's kind of, we know better what to do. We just give you our empathy, but we know better. So listen to us. It's kind of,
patronizing.
I'm afraid. Oh, patronizing. Yes, patronizing. Thank you. That's what I mean. I'm afraid this patronizing deniers. That's what I'm a little bit afraid.
Okay, so you like Jessica's idea about giving empathy to climate deniers, but you're worried it's a bit patronizing.
Yeah. But coming back to kind of my my ideas about climate change, I see an economy kind of shifting the economy paradigm to something new that is different from this imperative or permanent growth. I would like to say more about it. I stop there.
Okay, so you want to say more about how we can shift the economy away from the imperative permanent growth.
Yeah. And I believe that, well, the fundament of this imperative of permanent growth is features like greed and competition. It's kind of basic attitudes in our economic culture. I like this term, economic culture. And the greed and the competition are part of it.
Okay, so you're saying that greed and competition are basically fundamental to the current economic culture of permanent growth.
Yeah, and this permanent expanding everything. And to change this approach, I believe we have to go over the borders, over the borders of our countries. We have to go internationally, and that means sympathizing building the solidarity with all the societies of the third world that is mostly explored, not just by international companies, but we have kind of we living in the Western country, so-called Western country, we have our part in it, so to speak.
Okay, so you're saying that this shift in economic culture, it's going to require an international effort, and not just international companies, but actual Western or developed countries, civilians to take part.
Yes, because well, our economic status, welfare or wealth we live in, our economic status is much higher. Our safety is much bigger than for people who live in Africa, Asia, or let's say Latin America. And as long as we don't sympathize with them and try to build bridging, let's say our middle class or lower classes with those society, we can't change that. It's not about connections between governments and institutions. It's about sympathizing and solidarity between just regular people, common people. That's what we have to do.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're saying that this effort of shifting our economic culture, it's not just about governments talking to other governments, it's about solidarity with less developed countries.
Yes, but it's very difficult for me to explain that. Well, obviously I'm quite of radical left, so it kind of explained my point of view. But I believe that the prosperity, well, I'm kind of not very rich, rather poor person, and live very modestly, but still I am a part of society that kind of live in economic safety and welfare comparing to other countries. And I know that everybody who lives, well, that's my point of view, that everybody who lives in those Western countries live on this better status just because our country, governments which we have chosen through centuries, at least last 100 years, because that's how democracy lasts. But well, it's a part of kind of international exploitation. Our welfare, it's not just ours, it's an effect of kind of international exploitation. I have this very strong feeling, and to sympathize, we have to share our wealth. It means that we probably will be not so comfortable in the future if you want to sympathize with other societies and other people around the world.
I see. So you're saying how, even if you're living modestly in a, Western or developed country, you still have this safety net or this higher standard of living, and that we're it's really we've gotten that standard because of this we just happen to live in a country that benefits from the exploitation of resources, globally over the hundreds of years that we've been conquering and developing. And you're saying there needs to be a balancing. We need to rebalance the standards between, and our standard will go down if we really want to sympathize with other countries.
Yes, and if international companies destroy environment somewhere in Africa, and then we have a huge flood of refugees, we call them economic immigrants. We can't blame them for doing that, because we are part of this situation. And actually the natural disasters and economical catastrophe are mostly the reasons of the war. For example, the Syrian situation in Syria is the effect of first drought. You call it drought, probably.
Drought.
Dry season, very long dry season, drought, and the economic catastrophe there. And we are part of it. And to kind of sympathizing with those people, we have to share with them our wealth, and then we can change the situation. We can't just demand on other countries to be more ecological. It's easy for us, European or Americans or Canadians, okay, Western world. It's much easier for us. They have to survive every day. We can't just demand them to take care about their environment. That's the problem. We have to sympathize with them.
Right. So you're saying, and this will probably, I imagine, be the last thing because we're running out of time, but
I'm sorry.
no, it's okay. You're saying how we can't blame economic immigrants for being in the situation that they're in because we all helped create it. The situation, like, you know, Syrians and experiencing drought, and it's because of wars that, you know, we're all part of. So, you know, we have to share, we can't demand, you know, developing countries to make all these ecological changes when they're focused on survival and, you know, trying to raise their standard of living.
Yeah. So that's why the solidarity internationally is needed. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Cool.
Thank you.
So it looks like
yeah.
we're at 11:45.
Yeah, thank you, Evan, for keeping track of the time. So we'd love to hear now the Empathy Circle in itself. We wrapped it up, and we'd love to go around and if you can share your experience of today, how it went for you, and share what you liked about it and what would you wish
I'm
to
sorry,
see.
do you want to stop recording and again record? Did you want to?
I don't think it's necessary because we don't
Okay.
have any breakout rooms, but thank you for awareness.
Yeah. So who would like to start in sharing what did they like and what would they like to see more next time? Because there's going to be a next time. Carolina, would you like to start?
Well, I prefer wait a little bit.
Do you want to wait? Okay. Martin?
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now. Yeah. No, that was quite excellent. I enjoyed it very much. I guess what do I feel there was something missing, or there's some other element that could be added? I mean, you know, in a conventional conversation or in a conventional discussion group, it seems, you know, it's much more freewheeling, and you do have the interruptions, and the facilitator is really more of a controlling of a much more free form event, just making sure that people who are afraid of speaking maybe get their turn, and people who are speaking too much shut up, and all those kind of things. Where with this structure, it is so exact. It's quite a beautiful structure for you know, I could see it, you know, in complex and very difficult conflicts. If you can get everybody to agree to it, it's a bit like having a talking circle with a stick. You know, I can remember the first time I did a talking circle with a stick, and you know, the people go in and they say, "Are we going to have a talking stick?" And I say, "Yeah, afraid so. We are." You know, and it's kind of like a hippie, or you know, it's like, I mean, here in BC, in Canada, we have a lot of First Nations, and so the talking stick is kind of a well accepted thing, but in maybe you know, the middle of London or Paris or something like that, it feels a little more contrived. And this is sort of another structure of giving people a place to talk and be heard on different subjects. So sort of my congratulations to you, Jessica and Evan, for hosting us today. Thank you very much for that. And best wishes to Edwin for starting this ball rolling.
Yeah, he did start all of that. Thank you, Martin. Ben, would you like to share?
Yeah, I like this a lot. Yeah, I can be very introverted sometimes, or very talkative once I get rolling. So I like structures where there's room for both introverts and extroverts. Yeah, I love that where the person reflecting back what they heard is reflecting back what they heard in a way that the person will agree with, which is really different from someone who says, you know, when you said, well, for me, when I tell people my political beliefs, some people interpret that to mean politically centrist is code word for alt-right, for example. So people start telling me what I believe instead of reflecting back to me what I say I believe. So I love this a lot. And there's something else I wanted to say. Maybe we could each try and make a commitment to ask one person with very different political views than us to join in next time.
I love that idea. Thank you for sharing that idea, Ben.
Sure.
That's a good idea. I like it. Yeah. I'm taking a note of that. Bill, would you like to share?
Sure. Well, I really enjoyed it. It's great to talk with people from, all over the world and just experience people. I feel greatly enriched. Just to let you know about that, Edwin and Zach and some other people in the group today are going to the Republican convention to talk to conservatives in Sacramento. So that is, an outreach that we certainly do, and that I do too.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I just and so I really liked it. I wanted more, and I think that's the way it should be. I just wish you all a nice week.
Thank you, Bill. Carolina?
Well, lately I got this habit of listening again our talks on YouTube or on Facebook, not only because of some, understanding problems I experience, and sometimes I feel, okay, I just missed something he or she said. I have to listen to what she said once more to really hear what she said. But actually, I discovered that even I understand every word, sometimes I miss something. It's very interesting and kind of refreshing to listen to our talks after a few days, and I'm usually surprised. Oh God, he said that, and I didn't listen that. I didn't hear that. That's interesting experience because we usually have this impression, okay, I reflect to him and I did it more or less good, but suddenly I hear new things in somebody speech. So that's interesting, and probably I will try to listen to our talk again in few days, and probably again I will be surprised by things I kind of missed during our talk. But yeah, I'm glad to participate. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow, I appreciate your commitment to re-listen to the whole 2 hours. That's impressive.
Well, it's interesting. It's really interesting to after a few days to listen again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Probably not just for me.
Yeah. I find that great. Yeah. Evan, would you like to share a bit?
Yeah, I'm grateful because that we did another session on climate change because I think I feel it's very important, and I gain new perspectives every time, so that's great. Thank you all. I know that I need to deal with the grief of climate change. I maybe could start an environmental band, all while keeping aware of the fear of political control and AI, and then hopefully use all that to shift our consciousness with the economy, and then maybe go kayaking with whales and sharks.
What a beautiful wrap up. Wow. I love that. You were able to include everything that happened here in just one sentence. Beautiful. I'm super grateful too as well. It's always a joy, even though I'm always a bit nervous when I get on the call, and I'm feeling more relaxed and to have met you all, you guys. And thank you so much for showing up on a Saturday and willing to chat and share. I really, really enjoyed myself. And we're going to try to do on climate change once a month. So I don't know the next date, but, you know, keep an eye on Facebook and we'll send the invites. It's really a topic I do believe that from the feedback we also hear that it seems people are interested in talking about climate change. And I'd love to continue to do that. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Right.
you all.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.